Welcome, everyone, to a really special edition of the show today. This is the mini book podcast, African American Books edition.
Yes, welcome.
And we're doing something completely different today because we are cracking open a piece of literature that is part spy thriller, part satire, and honestly, a manual for revolution. We're talking about The Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee.
It is an absolute powerhouse of a novel. And right off the bat, we really have to send a massive thank you to our subscriber, Melissa Kerr-Gordon.
Oh, definitely.
Melissa Kerr-Gordon suggested this specific book for our readers. And, I mean, it was just such a brilliant pick. So thank you, Melissa Kerr-Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. It's a book that just grabs you by the throat and does not let go. And speaking of grabbing the book, we want to be really clear up front. If you enjoyed this discussion today, please go out and purchase The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Absolutely.
Support Sam Greenlee's legacy directly. We are going to give you the highlights and the analysis, but reading the actual text is, an experience you just don't want to miss.
100%. And in the spirit of transparency, we should mention that the voices you're hearing right now come from AI. However, the content, the history, and the incredible story we're about to unpack that comes straight from the book.
Right, straight from the source.
Exactly. And we feel that this is just a great way to learn about African American history through the lens of this specific, very provocative novel.
It really is. And just to be clear for you listening, as we get into some of the more extreme or politically charged content in this story, we are not taking sides or endorsing these tactics.
Right.
We're just impartially reporting on the content provided in the book, trying to convey the ideas exactly as the author laid them out.
Just sticking to the text.
Right. So let's get you hooked. Imagine this scenario. The CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, the most powerful spy organization on the planet, they decide to recruit a black officer for the very first time. They train him in everything: guerrilla warfare, subversion, judo, advanced weaponry. They basically turn him into the ultimate weapon.
And here is the kicker, right? They think they're hiring as a safe token Negro to basically sit by the door and prove they aren't racist. They think they've hired this compliant yes man.
Right.
But what they actually hired is a man who takes all that top secret training straight back to the south side of Chicago to declare war on the United States government.
It's the ultimate be careful what you wish for story. But how does this even happen? How does the CIA, of all places, accidentally train the leader of a black revolution?
Well, it starts where all great cynicism starts, I guess. Politics.
Always politics.
Always. We are in Washington, D.C., and we meet Senator Gilbert Hennington. He's looking at his polling numbers, and remember, this is the 1960s, so we're talking about those giant mainframe computers crunching data.
Oh, yeah, the punch cards.
Right, and the news is bad for him. He is losing the quote-unquote Negro vote.
So what does he do? Does he have this sudden change of heart and decide to fight for civil rights?
Not even a little bit. I mean, he just wants to get reelected. His wife, Belinda, who is honestly arguably the sharper political operator between the two of them, she comes up with a scheme.
A very cynical scheme.
Incredibly cynical. She tells him to accuse the CIA of segregation. Not because they actually care about integrating the agency, but just because it grabs headlines. It is entirely a political stunt.
Wow. So they are just using integration as a campaign prop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The senator hauls the director of the CIA in front of a committee and absolutely grills him. The director tries to argue that, Negroes aren't ready for intelligence work, which was sadly the prevailing racist attitude of the time.
Yeah.
But the bad press is just too much. To save face, the CIA agrees to integrate. They start a recruitment drive.
But they aren't looking for just anyone, are they?
No, not at all. They're looking for a very specific demographic. They're hunting for the black bourgeoisie.
Okay, let's pause right there. For anyone listening who maybe hasn't heard that term, can you break down what black bourgeoisie means in this specific context?
Sure. So in the context of the book, and really the sociology of that era, it refers to a class of African Americans who are socially and economically disconnected from the working class or the ghetto.
Okay.
The CIA wants men with Ivy League degrees, men from, good families, men who are desperate to assimilate into white culture. They want men who will be grateful just to be allowed in the room, not men who will rock the boat.
So they basically want compliance wrapped in a fancy diploma.
Precisely. So they bring in this whole group of these candidates. But then there's Dan Freeman, our protagonist.
Good man himself.
And Freeman is different. He's from the south side of Chicago. He knows the streets. But he also knows that if he acts like his true self, he'll be rejected immediately. So he puts on a mask.
You kids a role?
He plays the role of the Uncle Tom. Now, that's a really heavy term with a lot of history originating all the way back to Uncle Tom's Cabin. But in the 1960s context of this book, it meant a black man who is humiliatingly subservient to whites. Someone who, quote-unquote, knows his place.
Which is an incredibly difficult thing to fake if it's not who you are.
It is. But Freeman deliberately acts simple-minded. He wears suits that don't quite fit right. He smiles way too much. He intentionally lets the white instructors feel superior to him.
That is such a dangerous game to play, though. I mean, if he acts too incompetent, they're going to kick him out of the program. But if he acts too smart, they get suspicious.
Exactly. And that is the double consciousness at work. That's a concept from W.E.B. Du Bois about always seeing yourself through the eyes of a racist society. Freeman navigates this perfectly.
He has to balance it perfectly.
He does. The other candidates, those Ivy League guys, they crack under the pressure. The physical training is brutal, sure, but the social pressure destroys them. They try way too hard to be one of the boys. Freeman just focuses purely on survival.
And there's that one scene during the judo training that I think is just brilliant. It really shows his strategy.
It is so pivotal. The instructor tries to humiliate Freeman in front of everyone. He picks him out for a match, fully thinking he is going to just toss this token around the mat. Right. But Freeman is actually an absolute expert in judo. He realizes he can't just beat the instructor up, or he totally blows his cover.
He'd be too threatening.
Exactly. So he wins, but he makes it look like a complete accident. He acts clumsy and lucky. He manages to preserve the white instructor's ego while simultaneously proving he has the physical skills to stay in the program.
Which is genius. So, against all odds, he graduates. He becomes the very first black officer in the Central Intelligence Agency.
He gets the badge, and this is where the title of the book really hits home. The Spook Who Sat by the Door. They give him an office in the director's suite with glass walls right by the main entrance.
He is a literal display piece.
He is. When senators or VIPs come for tours, the CIA can just point to him behind a glass and say, look, we integrated, we're progressive. But his actual job, it's a complete insult. They put him in charge of the reproduction section.
So he is basically the head of the photocopy machine.
Yeah, he's a highly trained killer and a spy, and he is making copies.
It seems like a dead end. But this is actually the big aha moment of the whole setup. Because he is in charge of reproduction, everything has to go through his hands.
Yes.
In the days before email and digital files, if you wanted a top-secret document distributed, you sent it to reproduction.
Oh, you see where this is going.
He sees everything. Top-secret blueprints, demolition manuals, guides on how to organize resistance movements, interrogation techniques. The CIA thinks they've sidelined him, but they actually gave him the keys to the entire library.
They handed it right to him. He spends 5 years memorizing every single trick the agency has ever developed.
So he is stealing the entire CIA playbook while they literally think he's just making their coffee and copies.
Exactly. And after 5 years of playing the safe Negro, he quits. He just walks into the director's office and says he is leaving to go do social work back in Chicago.
And they buy it.
Oh, the CIA is actually relieved. They got their PR win out of him, and now they don't have to deal with him anymore. The president even gives him a cheap souvenir pocket knife as a goodbye gift.
That is just poetic justice right there. They give him a cheap knife, and he walks out the door with a head full of their most guarded state secrets. So he heads back to Chicago. Does he just start the revolution immediately?
No, he is way too smart for that. He knows one man isn't an army. He needs soldiers.
Yeah.
But he also knows he can't recruit normal, law-abiding citizens. He needs people who are already outside the system, people who are tough. So he targets a local street gang called the Cobras.
But wait, Freeman is still maintaining a cover, right? To the rest of the world, he is just this respectable social worker.
Right. And he plays that role to perfection. To the white establishment, he is the responsible professional. He drives a flashy Lotus. He dates light-skinned models. He goes to all these cocktail parties with white liberals.
He's the model citizen.
Exactly. But at night, he goes down to the Cobra's turf.
How does a guy in a silk suit get a hardened street gang to listen to him for even a second?
By speaking the one language they truly respect: violence. The gang leaders, these guys named Dean, Stud, and Scott, they try to jump him. And Freeman just unleashes 5 years of pent-up CIA combat training.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't just fight them, he completely dismantles them. He uses his judo to toss them around without even breaking a sweat.
So he earns their respect the hard way.
He earns their physical respect instantly. But then he does something much more important. He educates them.
Right, because fighting isn't enough to build a movement.
Exactly. He tells them they aren't just petty criminals, they are potential soldiers who have been brainwashed by the system to hate themselves. He teaches them African American history. He reads poetry to them. He takes all their anger and self-hatred and channels it into pride and strict military discipline.
He's building a true guerrilla army. But armies need funding. They need weapons and gear. And this leads to what I think is one of the most outrageous and clever moments in the entire book, the bank robbery.
This scene is an absolute masterclass in psychology. Freeman needs money, so he plans a massive bank heist. But he knows that eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, especially when it comes to race. He knows that white society has a massive blind spot.
So what's his play?
He selects only the absolute lightest-skinned members of the gang, like this one character named Pretty Willie. He sends them in to rob the bank. And they do it with complete military precision. They are fast, they are professional, they're highly articulate.
And what do the witnesses see when this happens?
The witnesses and the tellers, they all tell the police they were robbed by white men, or they use the word Caucasians.
Because in their minds...
Yes, because in their minds, professionalism and discipline and sophistication automatically equal white. They literally cannot process the idea of a black street gang pulling off a heist that complex.
That is just mind-blowing. He uses their own racism and stereotypes as a literal invisibility cloak.
Precisely. The police are running all over town looking for a highly trained crew of white professionals, while Freeman's crew is sitting safely back on the south side, counting the cash.
So now he has the money, he has his soldiers, he has the CIA training. All he needs at this point is a spark to set it all off.
And in a hot Chicago summer, a spark is inevitable. It finally happens when a white police officer shoots an unarmed black teenager. The whole neighborhood just explodes in grief and rage. Now, historically, this usually leads to an uncoordinated riot. Looting, burning down local stores, just pure chaos.
But this time, Freeman is there to act as the conductor.
Exactly. He uses the chaos of the riot to test his organization. While the police are completely distracted by the random looting, Freeman's specialized squads go work. But they aren't throwing bricks through windows.
No, they are way past bricks.
They are using coordinated sniper fire from the rooftops. They are using specialized jamming devices to block police radios. They are using Molotov cocktails to disable armored police vehicles.
It is organized warfare.
It's pure guerrilla warfare right on American soil. And Freeman takes it to the airwaves. He jams the local radio stations and starts broadcasting his own messages. And he calls himself Uncle Tom of the Black Freedom Fighters.
He actually uses that name again.
He reclaims it entirely. He uses the broadcast to mock the police, to mock the mayor. He uses street slang and dark humor to rally the community. He basically breaks a psychological hold the authorities have on the people by making the police look incompetent and silly.
Speaking of making them look silly, we absolutely have to talk about the National Guard sequence. This is the part of the book where things get truly, truly wild.
It is so outrageous. The governor eventually calls in the National Guard to put down the uprising. Now, Freeman knows he cannot beat the National Guard in a direct head-to-head battle. They have tanks, they have superior numbers.
Right.
He has to break their morale instead. So his team manages to kidnap the actual colonel in charge of the Guard units.
They kidnap the commanding officer.
Yeah.
And what do they do to him? Because this is a detail you really can't forget.
They do two things. First, they paint his face in blackface like the old highly offensive minstrel shows. And second, they secretly dose his coffee with a massive amount of LSD.
They drug the National Guard commander with acid.
Yes. And then they just release him in a public park. When his own troops finally find him, their fearless leader is high as a kite, giggling, splashing his bare feet in a public fountain, completely incoherent, and wearing blackface.
That destroys the chain of command instantly. I mean, how do you recover from that?
You don't. It makes the military leadership a total laughingstock. How can soldiers follow orders from a man they just saw tripping in a fountain? It buys the revolution incredibly valuable time.
It's brilliant psychological warfare.
It is, but frankly, the humor of the book really stops there. The story gets much, much darker as the government realizes they're actually losing control of the city.
Right, because they realize the National Guard isn't enough, so they stop messing around and start sending in the real military.
Exactly. They send in the elite airborne divisions, highly trained combat troops, many of whom are actually black veterans returning from overseas. And Freeman realizes this is no longer a game, and it's no longer just a local protest. It is total war. And this escalation brings us to the really tragic figure of Dawson.
Right. Dawson is Freeman's old friend, isn't he?
Yes. Dawson is a black police officer in Chicago, and he represents the completely opposite path from Freeman. Dawson is the man who truly believes in law and order, who believes you have to change the system slowly from the inside.
A reformer.
Exactly. But Dawson is smart. He's been investigating the recent gang activity, the advanced tactics, and he puts all the pieces together.
He figures out that his old friend Freeman is the mastermind behind it all.
He does. And he goes straight to Freeman's apartment. He sees the maps on the wall, the secret cache of weapons, and you have this incredibly tense standoff. Two black men who have been friends as a childhood staring at each other across this massive ideological divide. Dawson looks at him and says, "I have to arrest you. This is madness."
And Freeman tries to talk him out of it.
He tries everything. He begs Dawson to open his eyes and join the revolution. But Dawson refuses. He is sworn to uphold the law. And Freeman is suddenly faced with an impossible choice. He can let Dawson arrest him, which immediately ends the revolution and dooms all his young soldiers, or
he has to silence his best friend.
Freeman kills Dawson with his bare hands. It is easily the most heartbreaking, devastating moment in the book. It really shows the terrible, absolute cost of what Freeman is doing. He sacrifices his own humanity, his own soul to protect the cause.
That is the ultimate point of no return for him.
It is. Freeman realizes there is no going back to the social worker cover now. He is fully exposed emotionally and tactically. So he gathers his lieutenants, those young gang members he trained from scratch, and he tells them Dawson is dead. And then he issues the order for Condition Red.
Condition Red. That sounds incredibly ominous. What does that actually mean for the movement?
It means the gloves are entirely off. It means expanding the war far beyond Chicago. Freeman's plan was never just about one city. He wants to burn the entire system down nationwide. He orders his trained cells to start coordinated attacks in Harlem, in Watts, in Washington, D.C. He wants to stretch the government's military resources so thin until they simply break.
So how does this story actually end? Does Freeman win the war? Does he become the king of America?
That is the real genius of Sam Greenlee's ending. Freeman doesn't want to be a king or a dictator. As the city is literally burning around him and the army tanks are rolling down the streets, Freeman looks at his soldiers, these young men, who used to be just petty criminals fighting each other. And he realizes something profound. They don't need him anymore.
Wow. He worked himself entirely out of a job.
Exactly. He has successfully transferred all his CIA skills to them. He was the spark, but they are now the fire. He realizes that even if he gets shot and dies in the next 5 minutes, the revolution cannot be stopped because the knowledge has already been passed on. The spook who sat by the door woke up the entire house.
That is, wow. It really leaves you with a lot to process. It's a gripping thriller. It has all this action, but underneath all of that, it is this incredibly sharp commentary on the danger of underestimating people.
That really is the core theme of the novel. The entire intelligence system failed because they simply couldn't see past their own racial stereotypes. They saw a safe Negro sitting behind a glass desk, and they never once bothered to look at the actual man behind the mask. It really asks the reader to consider who we are underestimating in our own society today and what happens when those marginalized people finally decide to stand up.
It's such a powerful message, and honestly, it feels just as relevant today as when it was first published. But it also leaves you with this really provocative thought, like when Freeman sacrifices his best friend, when he loses his humanity for the sake of the revolution, does he risk becoming the very cold, calculating machine he was trying to destroy?
That's a great question.
It's something for you listening to really mull over. Can you dismantle the master's house using the master's tools without losing yourself in the process?
It's a heavy question, and the book doesn't give you easy answers.
It certainly doesn't. Well, we really want to thank you for listening to this special African American Books edition. We hope this story hooked you as much as it did us.
And once again, a huge thank you to Melissa Kerr-Gordon for the suggestion. It was just an incredible ride.
If this discussion sparked your interest even a little bit, we really encourage you to go out and buy The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Read it for yourself. It is a profound experience. And if you liked what you heard today, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep bringing you these deep analyses.
Definitely. And tell a friend about us. Share this with someone who loves a good thriller or history. And we absolutely want to hear from you. Head down to the comments section and tell us what books you'd like to hear us cover in future episodes. We read every single suggestion.
We really do. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for spending your time with us. We will see you next time.
Keep reading, everyone.